The world probably feels like it's coming apart at the seams. The dollar's stability hangs in the balance while inflation erodes purchasing power. Wars are raging across multiple continents, threatening to expand into global conflicts, and political violence is erupting around the country. Racial tensions are simmering beneath a veneer of progress that seems increasingly fragile. Most people our age are trapped in cycles of debt and economic anxiety, living paycheck to paycheck while watching previous generations' promise of prosperity evaporate. The very institutions that were supposed to provide stability, democracy, capitalism, and social cohesion appear to be falling apart all simultaneously. So, it's natural to feel overwhelmed and even hopeless when confronting such widespread instability. Yet, here's what history teaches us: this feeling of living through unprecedented chaos is not unprecedented. You see, the human experience has always included periods where everything seems to be falling apart, where the future appears impossibly uncertain, and where young people inherit a world that feels fundamentally broken, as our generation has. Now, what's remarkable is not that we're experiencing these challenges, but that previous generations found ways to create meaning, build resilience, and discover inspiration even in the darkest of times. The resources for hope and purpose exist even now, scattered throughout the rubble of our current moment, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond the immediate chaos. Now, when speaking with people my age about their personal lives, I've noticed a pretty common theme. There seems to be this general lack of hope and very little reason for people to feel inspired. So, today, I want to guide you through a philosophical and historical analysis of our world today and provide you with a reasoned and a know how to find that inspiration that has driven our ancestors to survive for thousands of years. But first, we need to step back in time to when everything was just as unstable as it is today. Now, the Gilded Age roughly was from about 1870 to about 1900, and it featured the same cocktail of problems that we face today: extreme economic inequality that made a mockery of democratic ideals, rapid technological change that left entire communities obsolete, mass immigration that sparked nativist backlash, and political corruption so brazen it became the defining feature of governance. Industrial monopolies controlled entire sectors of the economy, while workers lived in squalor, and racial violence reached a horrific peak as Reconstructionists' promises crumbled into Jim Crow segregation. Sound familiar? Well, the philosophers and thinkers who lived through this period weren't writing from ivory towers. They were grappling with the same fundamental questions about human dignity and possibility that confront us today. Now, among these thinkers, several stand out for their insights on finding purpose amid chaos. William James, the founder of American pragmatism, argued that belief itself could be a form of action, that choosing to see possibilities where others saw only problems was a philosophical stance with real world consequences. John Dewey emphasized that democracy and education were not fixed systems, but ongoing experiments, requiring constant renewal and individual participation. Henry George proposed radical solutions to inequality, insisting that economic injustice wasn't an invisible law of nature, but a solvable problem requiring both vision and commitment. But it's Josiah Royce who offers perhaps the most profound guidance for our current movement. Now, Royce lived from about 1855 to 1916. So he witnessed the full transformation of America from a rural republic to an industrial empire. And his philosophy emerged directly from wrestling with the question of how individuals could find meaning and purpose in such rapidly changing times. His central insight was revolutionary in its simplicity. His idea was that true inspiration comes not from avoiding the chaos of the world, but from choosing to dedicate yourself to something larger than your own immediate self interests. Now, I want to focus on this theme because I believe that much of the advice you hear today is either to stay out of politics and worldly problems or choose a side and be happy with it. But Royce's philosophy of loyalty provides a framework for understanding what genuine inspiration actually is. For Royce, loyalty wasn't blind obedience or tribal allegiance, but what he called the willing and practical and thoroughgoing devotion of a person to a cause. Now, this cause had to be something that enriched your own life and the lives of others, something that connected you to a community of shared purpose. Inspiration, in his understanding, emerges when you align your personal energy and creativity with causes that transcend your immediate circumstances. Now, this is fundamentally different from the shallow inspiration that we're often sold. The motivational quotes, the individual success stories, the promise that positive thinking can transform your life. Royce understood that lasting inspiration requires what he called loyalty to loyalty, a commitment to principles and communities that can sustain you even when external conditions are hostile or uncertain. When you're building a career, this might mean choosing work that contributes to something meaningful rather than simply maximizing your immediate financial gain. In business, it could mean creating value for others rather than just extracting profit. In family life, it means seeing your relationships as opportunities to practice the kind of love and commitment that strengthens the social fabric. In today's society, many people have chosen to start businesses that simply extract money from others without providing any real value. Or they choose shallow relationships over the struggle of building strong bonds with people. To find inspiration, you have to have something or someone to be inspired by. Whether that's a spouse that you choose to devote your time and energy to, or solving a legitimate problem that people have, rather than just filling a need in the market. Inspiration comes from a deep purpose and an unwavering commitment to succeed. Royce's concept of lost causes is particularly relevant for young people today. He argued that the most inspiring commitments are often to ideals whose full realization extends far beyond any single lifetime. Things like justice, truth, beauty, and human flourishing. Now, these aren't causes that you can complete or finish, but they are causes that give you shape and direction in life. When you commit yourself to such causes, you're joining a community that extends across time, connecting you with past generations who fought similar battles and future generations who will continue the work. The temporal perspective transforms daily struggles from isolated burdens into contributions to something enduring and worthwhile. And let's just go through a few examples. Consider the cause of human dignity and equality. Each generation inherits this struggle in a new form and must actively choose to advance it or watch it regress. The abolitionists of the 1860s fought chattel slavery and then passed that torch to the civil rights leaders of the 1960s, who dismantled legal segregation and who then passed it to contemporary activists addressing the systemic qualities in criminal justice, education, and economic opportunity. Without each generation's active engagement, the gains of the previous generations can be easily reversed. The cause itself transcends any single historical moment or figure, but it requires continuous commitment to maintain its forward momentum. The pursuit of knowledge and intellectual freedom offers yet another example. Medieval scholars preserved classical learning through the Dark Ages. Renaissance thinkers challenged religious orthodoxy, and Enlightenment philosophers championed reason and scientific inquiry. And even 20th century intellects defended academic freedom against totalitarian regimes. Now, today's generation inherits the responsibility of protecting intellectual honesty in an age of information warfare, algorithmic manipulation, and institutional capture. The eternal cause of truth seeking manifests differently in each era, but it requires the same fundamental commitment to rigorous thinking and courageous inquiry. Environmental stewardship presents perhaps the most urgent intergenerational cause of our time. The cause of living harmoniously with the natural world is ancient, but each generation must discover new ways to embody this principle given the technologies and challenges of their time. The practical implications of Royce's philosophy are profound. Instead of waiting for the world to provide you with purpose, you have to actively choose your loyalties and your commitments. Instead of being paralyzed by the scale of global problems, you focus on specific ways that you can contribute to solutions within your sphere of influence. Instead of seeking inspiration from external validation or material success, you cultivate it through the practice of loyalty itself. The daily choice to show up for the people and principles that you've committed to serve. Royce also understood that inspiration often emerges from suffering and difficulty rather than despite them. In his work, The Sources of Religious Insight, he explored how individuals and communities find guidance by transforming hardship into creative and constructive growth. Now, this doesn't mean to romanticize struggle or accept injustice. Rather, it means recognizing that the challenges facing our generation, like economic instability, political polarization, and environmental crisis, can become the very ground from which new forms of meaning and purpose emerge. Your response to these challenges, the way that you choose to engage with them, becomes a form of self creation and community building. The key insight here is that inspiration is not something that happens to you, but something that you actively cultivate through your choices and your commitments. When you're facing career decisions, the question shouldn't be, what will make me successful? But instead, what work would I be proud to have contributed to, regardless of external recognition? And when you're building relationships, the question becomes, how can I practice the kind of love and loyalty that strengthens everyone involved? And when confronting social problems, the question shifts to what specific contribution can I make to causes that matter, even if the full solution is beyond my individual capacity. I think a lot of the problems in our political sphere have to do with if you take one stance on one particular issue, then that automatically means that you are for all the issues on the right or the left. But it doesn't have to be that way. We are individual human beings We can have one perspective on immigration and another perspective on taxes. And this brings us to perhaps the most liberating aspect of his philosophy, the recognition that you don't need to solve every problem or fix every injustice to live an inspired and meaningful life. Societies will always contain internal struggles and debates. This is the normal condition of human communities, not a sign of impending collapse. You can have disagreements with your family, your community, and even your country, but that doesn't mean that you have to break down the system in order to solve those disagreements. The majority of these larger conflicts don't need to impact your personal sense of purpose and direction, as long as you don't allow yourself to be consumed by them. You can acknowledge the reality of systematic problems while choosing to focus your energy on the specific ways that you can contribute to solutions. This doesn't mean withdrawing from civil life or ignoring injustice, but approaching social engagement from a position of strength and clarity about your own values and commitments, rather than from a position of reactive anxiety or despair. When you are grounded in your own sense of purpose, you can engage with political and social issues more effectively because you're not depending on external outcomes for your sense of meaning and identity. The philosophers of the Gilded Age faced many of the same problems that we're facing today, and in some ways, much more severe than ours. They lived through economic depressions that lasted for years, labor conflicts that turned into shooting wars, and levels of political corruption that made governance almost impossible. Yet, from this chaos emerged some of the most profound and enduring insights about human possibility and social progress. They discovered that inspiration is a fundamental human capacity that can be cultivated and sustained even in the most challenging of circumstances. The world that we are inheriting is indeed marked by instability and uncertainty, but it's also rich with opportunities for those who are at least willing to engage thoughtfully and purposefully. The path forward is to begin the practice of loyalty to causes and communities that matter to you. And remember that every generation faces the choice between cynicism and hope, or withdrawal and engagement, between despair and inspiration. The philosophers of the Gilded Age chose hope, engagement, and inspiration because they understood that these choices were themselves forms of creative action. So, with that said, thank you for taking the time to explore these ideas with me. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, I will see y'all next time.